The rain had barely stopped when the elderly gatekeeper at Bletchley Park lifted his head and narrowed his eyes at the young woman standing before him. The morning was cold, heavy, and unusually still, an atmosphere that felt like the calm before something world-shifting. Joan Clarke waited, clutching a small suitcase and a cryptic letter inviting her to report to the government code and cipher school, a name whose true purpose no outsider understood. The porter eventually waved her through. He'd seen more and more young, university types arrive with similar vague orders. None of them knew what they were walking into. Inside the requisitioned Victorian manor, a senior administrator flipped through Clarke's file and frowned. Grammar school. Scholarship girl. Female. The sigh that followed was almost policy. By mid-1940, Bletchley Park swarmed with well-connected Oxford and Cambridge men, while women, even the brilliant ones, were pushed toward clerical posts or machine rooms. Actual code-breaking belonged to Britain's male elite. Tradition held strong, even as U-boats strangled Britain's supply lines. Clarke had taken an unlikely path here. Born in 1917 to a clergyman with modest means, she'd gone to WWII school instead of the elite boarding schools that fed women into academia. But her talent for mathematics was unmistakable, an intuitive ability to see patterns others missed. At Newnham College, Cambridge, she outperformed most. Yet Cambridge still refused to award real degrees to women. She received only a symbolic certificate, a reminder that her brilliance didn't grant her equal standing. Her first Bletchley assignment? Clerical checking of naval decrypts, essentially proofreading men's work. The other women in her section were polite, mostly aristocratic young ladies doing their national service. Clarke spoke little, observing the strange mix of secrecy and routine that ruled the estate. Rumors drifted through the canteen. Hut 6 handled Army and Air Force Enigma. Hut 3 translated decrypted signals. Hut 8, new, understaffed, and struggling, faced the Navy's Enigma, the most fiendishly secure of all. Those encrypted messages coordinated German U-boat wolf packs hunting the convoys Britain desperately needed to survive. Breaking naval Enigma wasn't theoretical. It was about preventing starvation and defeat. During her second week, a Hut 6 analyst, with the confidence of someone born into privilege, mocked her grammar school background loud enough for everyone to hear. Clarke ignored him. She'd dealt with such condescension her entire life. What she didn't know was that someone else had noticed her, someone whose attention could change everything. Gordon Welchman, respected Cambridge mathematician and a key figure in Bletchley's structure, had seen her work. Her precision stood out, but more intriguing were the notes she quietly added to decrypt sheets, patterns she spotted that no one asked her to analyze. Few clerks even knew what they were looking at. Clarke saw deeper. Welchman mentioned her to Alan Turing over lunch. Turing, already considered one of Britain's greatest mathematical minds, led Hut 8's battle against naval Enigma. Socially awkward, intensely brilliant, Turing cared nothing about class or gender. He cared only about minds capable of cracking the machine that was sinking British sailors by the hundreds. He interviewed Clarke in late June. The conversation lasted 3 hours. They discussed probability, inference, the nature of mechanical logic, topics most academics avoided entirely. Turing walked away convinced. He invited her to become a cryptanalyst, not a clerk. But the personnel office balked. Cryptanalyst was a male grade. Paying a woman that salary was administratively awkward. So they labeled her a linguist, even though she didn't speak German, and paid her less. She accepted anyway. What mattered was the work. In early July she stepped into Hut 8, joining one of the most secret teams in Britain. The hut was cramped, icy, and dim, smelling of tea and damp wool. Her desk held nothing but pencils, piles of paper, and stacks of intercepted 5-letter ciphertext that currently meant nothing. Turing explained the Enigma system, its staggering number of daily settings, its plugboard variants, its vulnerability to cribs. Naval messages followed patterns that, if guessed correctly, allowed Bletchley's electromechanical bombs to test thousands of settings. Clarke listened, absorbing everything. She asked only 3 questions, each revealing she grasped the heart of the challenge immediately. And that is where her real work, the work that would help change the course of the war, began. Clarke's real work began the moment she stepped fully into Hut 8, and Turing noticed it almost at once. Within days he was watching her sort through intercepted naval messages with a focus so sharp it almost unnerved the others. One morning he actually smiled, a rare show of approval, and assigned her to help refine Bambarismus, his statistical method for narrowing Enigma settings before sending them to the bombs. The task demanded intense concentration, searching for overlaps where two German messages shared the same hidden rotor positions. It wasn't simple math, it was intuition shaped by logic. Clarke excelled immediately. Within 2 weeks, Turing was asking for her input on improving his methods. Hut 8 existed because the Atlantic was becoming a graveyard. By late 1940, Admiral Karl Donetz's U-boats had perfected coordinated wolf pack attacks, sinking over 300,000 tons of British shipping each month. 30 submarines were crippling an entire nation. If the attacks continued, Britain would starve before 1942. Only one hope remained: break naval enigma, known to Bletchley cryptanalysts as Heimisch Gewasser or home waters. But naval enigma was far tougher than the Army or Air Force versions. The Kriegsmarine changed settings more often, used additional rotor wirings, and meticulously avoided the predictable phrases that provided cribs. Theory alone couldn't break it. The practice required stamina and luck. Clarke joined Hut 8 just as they achieved their first sustained break into naval messages from the spring of 1940. Historically interesting, but useless for saving convoys months later. Meanwhile, German operators improved discipline, shortened messages, and changed the Grundstellung, the starting rotor position, more often, crippling Bambarismus. Shifts inside Hut 8 ran around the clock. Clarke worked beside Hugh Alexander, Britain's chess champion, and several Cambridge mathematicians whose pre-war lives revolved around abstract theory. The atmosphere balanced competition with deep cooperation. Ideas were thrown out, dismantled, rebuilt, and improved in minutes. Clarke spoke cautiously at first, aware she was the only woman in the room. But Turing didn't tolerate hierarchy. When she proposed a change to the scoring system that increased Bambarismus efficiency, he implemented it immediately. No ceremony, just progress. Intercepts arrived constantly from Britain's coastal listening posts. Movement orders, weather reports, attack confirmations. Meaningless jumbles until the right key unlocked them. Clarke often walked out after 12-hour shifts knowing convoys were sailing blind, and that the key she failed to find might cost hundreds of lives. By December 1940, the team's success improved slightly. Sometimes they broke a day's settings before they expired, rare, but crucial. Clarke developed a near-instinctive feel for the work, sensing when messages shared a pattern long before the calculations proved it. Turing noticed and increasingly trusted her judgment on which paths were worth pursuing. The grammar school girl was outperforming men groomed for this world since childhood. Bambarismus itself relied on thin cardboard sheets manufactured in Banbury, punched with holes for letter frequencies. By overlaying them, cryptanalysts could spot repeating patterns and reduce the number of rotor combinations the bombs needed to test. Turing measured confidence in bands, a statistical scoring unit. 10 bands for 10-to-1 odds, 50 bands for certainty. Clarke developed remarkable speed at forming message chains, groups sharing the same hidden settings. She tracked German radio operators, noting quirks invisible to pure mathematics, a slightly unusual phrasing, a preference for certain formats, a rhythm in weather reports. These human fingerprints guided her intuition. One February night in 1941, she linked 7 intercepts, collecting enough bands to identify the day's rotor settings while they were still operational. The breakthrough allowed the Admiralty to reroute convoys away from waiting wolf packs. 2 convoys reached Britain safely. Churchill received the intelligence. He never knew the key insight came from a 23-year-old woman from Dulwich. Clarke worked in a near trance during these breakthroughs, losing track of time, forgetting meals, missing buses back to her billet. Others at Hut 8 understood. They all fought the same invisible opponent. Hugh Alexander once compared her to a chess grandmaster, eliminating bad paths instantly, focusing only on the moves that mattered. Her ability to identify promising intercepts prevented the team from drowning in raw data. But in early 1942, disaster struck. The Germans grew suspicious. Convoys were evading wolf packs too consistently. Unaware Enigma was compromised. They still feared leaks and tightened procedures. On February 1st, they introduced Triton, a new Enigma variant with a 4th rotor. Overnight, the number of possible settings exploded. Bletchley called the new system Shark, a fitting name. Convoy losses skyrocketed. March 1942. 600,000 tons sunk, double the previous month. April, even worse. The Admiralty was routing convoys blind. Hut 8 stared at shark intercepts that revealed nothing. Breaking four-rotor Enigma would require new four-rotor bombs, machines that didn't exist yet. And so the pressure on Turing's team tightened, unbearably. Understanding this gave Clarke no relief. Even knowing why Shark was so hard to break didn't ease the guilt. She kept pushing Banburismus against the new traffic, fully aware the technique had lost much of its power. The fourth rotor hadn't just expanded the search space, it had changed the statistical patterns the method relied on. Her instincts failed her. Messages that should have aligned simply didn't. Promising leads evaporated after hours of work. Everyone in Hut 8 felt the strain. They were brilliant people failing at the single task that mattered while the Atlantic death toll soared. During this bleak period, Clarke began experimenting out of pure necessity. She turned to short messages, tiny weather updates, routine acknowledgments that normally offered almost nothing for analysis. Her reasoning was simple. German operators grew sloppy during routine transmissions. Maybe they repeated familiar formats or reused starting positions. If she could identify these patterns, they might serve as cribs for breaking more complex messages. It was tedious work, sifting through mountains of low-value intercepts, logging tiny anomalies, but she did it anyway, building rough databases whenever she could spare the time. By mid-1942, Hut 8 had expanded into a crowded, sleepless machine of several dozen analysts rotating through shifts. Many were young recruits shocked by the transition from university lectures to the relentless reality of submarine warfare. Clarke became an unofficial mentor, explaining techniques clearly, reviewing their work, steadying nerves. She had no formal authority, yet her skill commanded respect, especially from newcomers who found her explanations far more comprehensible than Turing's cryptic shorthand. The breakthrough finally came in late October 1942. In the Mediterranean, the Royal Navy captured U-559 intact, complete with its four-rotor Enigma machine and current codebooks. For the first time, Hut 8 could examine real shark configurations instead of guessing. Clarke spent 3 days studying the machine, learning exactly how the fourth rotor behaved and spotting weaknesses only hands-on experience could reveal. Within 2 weeks, shark traffic was readable again. The Atlantic fog lifted almost overnight. Convoys received timely routing intelligence, slipping past wolf packs that once slaughtered them. November losses fell to 119,000 tons, the lowest in months. In March 1943, Turing made a decision without asking permission from anyone above him. One morning, he simply informed Clarke she was now deputy head of Hut 8, responsible for managing workflow and coordinating the swarm of analysts. No woman at Bletchley had ever held comparable authority over cryptanalytic operations. Women supervised clerical units or bomb operators, but never the decoding itself. Yet Hut 8 needed someone who could manage people and math simultaneously. Alexander disliked administration, and Turing worked best when left alone with problems, not schedules. Clarke's organizational clarity made her the only logical choice. Her days began at 0800 reviewing night shift progress. Partial shark breaks the day team would try to complete. She decided which messages deserved further work, which were dead ends, and which required bomb time, a scarce resource coveted by multiple sections. Her decisions blended mathematical insight with an instinctive sense of strategic value. Most of the male analysts accepted her leadership without issue. A few balked quietly, challenging her priorities with polite skepticism. Clarke answered by being consistently right. High-priority messages she selected produced valuable intelligence. Threads she cut loose proved to be time-wasters. Even the doubters eventually fell in line. Her working relationship with Turing deepened, professionally close in ways outsiders found hard to categorize. They communicated in truncated sentences, mathematical hints, half-formed ideas. He trusted her completely. They even broadened their discussions beyond wartime needs, touching on Turing's early visions of universal computing machines. Clarke grasped these concepts immediately, offering improvements he folded into his thinking. For a brief period in early 1943, they were even engaged, a practical arrangement that offered Turing social cover and Clarke stability. When he eventually told her the truth about his orientation, she accepted it without drama. The engagement dissolved, the friendship remained. Her promotion, however, came without a corresponding pay increase. She was still classified as a linguist, with vague promises of revisiting women's pay scales after the war. Clarke didn't fight it. She was 25, leading Britain's most crucial code-breaking unit, directly influencing the outcome of the Atlantic War. Money felt irrelevant, an outlook she would later recognize as naive. Throughout 1943, Hut-8's decrypts transformed the Atlantic campaign. Each Enigma key they cracked revealed U-boat positions, patrol patterns, refueling plans. Commander Roger Wynn's tracking room mapped every known submarine onto vast wall charts, and convoy officers steered merchant ships through narrow gaps between wolf packs. The effect was dramatic. Shipping losses fell from roughly 500,000 tons in early 1943 to under 200,000 by summer. Clarke knew the cycle by heart. Break the daily shark key, pass the decrypts to the Admiralty, reroute convoys within hours, lives saved in silence. She also saw the cost. Some messages described torpedo strikes and casualty numbers in cold, clinical language. Other times, the ones Hut-8 helped prevent meant families would see their sailors again. That knowledge kept her going. By May 1943, the tide finally turned. Allied radar, escort carriers, and intelligence-guided hunts began sinking U-boats faster than Germany could replace them. Refueling areas were ambushed with uncanny precision thanks to Hut-8's decrypts. In that single month, Allied forces destroyed 41 submarines, many with experienced crews Germany could never replace. Donitz pulled his wolf packs from the North Atlantic, an admission of temporary defeat. Clarke's role remained invisible. No medals. No public praise. Under the Official Secrets Act, she couldn't tell anyone, not even her family, what she had done for her country. Her parents never learned more than the official line, that she had done routine clerical work for the Foreign Office. The gulf between what she had actually achieved and what the world believed she'd done bothered her at times, but she'd accepted this as the nature of intelligence work. Success left no public trace, and the people responsible vanished quietly once peace returned. By late 1943, Hut-8 was reading shark traffic with a reliability that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. Clarke had refined her methods to their practical limit, and the growing bomb network now processed the narrowed setting fields her analysis produced. A steady flow of new recruits arrived, and Clarke spent increasing time training them, trying to teach intuition that could never quite be put fully into words. Some instantly saw patterns as she did. Others remained capable, but never exceptional. Clarke could tell the difference almost immediately. Victory in Europe on May 8, 1945 brought a brief celebration, followed by a sweeping erasure of Bletchley Park's wartime footprint. Bombs were dismantled, papers burned, and everyone was reminded firmly of the Official Secrets Act. Nothing they had done, not successes, not methods, not even daily routines, could ever be revealed. Britain intended to keep Enigma's compromise hidden and continue using captured machines for intelligence advantages. Silence was now part of national strategy. Clarke received her dismissal notice in July 1945. It was courteously phrased but final. Her temporary wartime post had ended, her linguist-grade pay stopped immediately, and no pension applied. She cleared her desk, destroyed her notes as required, and walked out carrying a small box of personal items. At 28, she had given 5 years to work that changed the course of the war, yet she left with no references she could show and no recognition she could claim. Her male colleagues fared far better. Turing received an OBE and moved straight into post-war computing research. Alexander returned to chess and later became a senior figure at GCHQ. Former Cambridge recruits resumed academic careers, their vague war service enhancing reputations even though the details remained sealed. Clarke, meanwhile, returned to signals intelligence at GCHQ, the only place where her real skills, officially unacknowledged, were understood. She remained on the lower civil service pay scale, earning significantly less than men doing identical work. Complaints were dismissed as matters of established structure. She kept in touch with Turing, exchanging letters on mathematics and computing theory. She also watched the state destroy him. His arrest in 1952, the forced medical treatment, and his death in 1954. Bound by secrecy, she could not defend him publicly, even though no one understood his brilliance better than she had. Clarke married Lieutenant Colonel Jock Murray the same year, gaining stability and companionship without ever revealing the true depth of her wartime achievements. She continued her intelligence career intermittently while raising a family, always constrained by the secrecy that prevented her from explaining why her academic path had vanished or why her abilities remained hidden behind classified doors. For decades after the war, she existed in public silence. Early Bletchley Park accounts focused almost entirely on men: Turing, the bombs, the dramatic breakthroughs, while women appeared mainly as machine operators or clerks. Clarke was reduced in most histories to a footnote, Turing's brief fiancée. Only in the 1980s and 1990s, when more documents were declassified, did historians uncover her true role. Records showed she had been deputy head of Hut 8, had refined Bambarismus, and had supervised male analysts whose later careers outshone hers only because they were allowed to speak about their work. Testimonies from surviving colleagues confirmed her exceptional ability. Alexander's private notes describe her skills as equal to any man in the section and essential to its success. Gradually, a revised picture emerged. The young woman dismissed in 1940 as an underqualified grammar school girl had, in fact, been indispensable to defeating Germany's U-boat campaign. Recognition came painfully late. She received an MBE in 1947, an honor far below what her contribution merited, and nothing further during her life. Only after her death in 1996 did historians publicly champion her achievements. When Turing was placed on the 50-pound note in 2014, Clarke's work was finally mentioned in supporting material, though she received no equivalent honor. Her story exposes how easily societies have overlooked women's intellectual labor. Clarke matched the abilities of the most celebrated male cryptanalysts and pioneered techniques that directly shaped Allied victory, yet she earned less, held lower status, and died without widespread acknowledgement. Today she appears in documentaries and films, often framed narrowly as Turing's love interest rather than his equal. But the truth remains, the 20-year-old woman they underestimated in 1940 became deputy leader of Britain's most important code-breaking unit, helped crack the system protecting U-boat wolf packs, and played a decisive part in winning the Battle of the Atlantic, all while receiving little credit and remaining bound to lifelong silence. Her life reminds us how much brilliance has been lost to prejudice, and how many Joan Clarke's history still overlooks.